Hello, I'm Don Ward, Chief Executive of CIB, and welcome to another episode of CIB in Conversation. CIB, or the Conseil International du Bâtiment in French, is the global network for collaboration in research and innovation in the built environment. And welcome to everyone today who is joining us, whether it's by video or by podcast. For more information about what we do and how we add value for our global network, please go to the website cibworld.org. Now, this CIB in Conversation series is all about meeting the personalities behind leaders in the world of built environment research and innovation. And I'm delighted to say that my guest today is Dr. Jim Rowings of Kiewit Cororpation. Now, Jim gave a keynote presentation at our board meeting in June 2021, and a recording of that is available on our website. He talked mainly there about how to enable greater collaboration between industry and academia, and we'll insert a link to that presentation into this video. So in this edition of CIB in Conversation, the plan is more to focus on Jim's background and his career and how he came to have such an interesting mix of both industry and academic experience and expertise. So Jim, hello.
Hello.
Hello. So where are you coming to us from today?
Well, today I'm coming from my office, actually at Kiewit University.
Fantastic,
That's Omaha, Nebraska. Sorry.
Omaha, Nebraska. Fantastic. And that building behind you looks very interesting. What's that?
That is our Kiewit University cafeteria. We have about a 60,000 square foot facility. It's dedicated to our training and development of our salaried staff for the most part. We also have about a quarter of that facility is our innovation center, where we have some of the technologies and the latest innovations that we're applying out on our projects in demonstration form, so that as learners come in, kind of learn and take technology lessons from our jobs and share them across our North American company.
Well, I tell you what, the facility sounds fantastic. It certainly looks fantastic. So we'll come back to that, Jim. We'll talk some more about that in a few minutes. Let's start by talking a little bit more about your background and your early career. I mean, how did you come to get into construction in the first place?
Well, I think I had some family members that were carpenters and involved. My father was a steel worker and some of that. And so I knew I was going to study civil engineering, and that's where I kind of started. But kind of the funding for my undergraduate education came to a bit of a halt because I had an uncle who was in a construction company that was helping out and was unable to. So I had to actually go out and I worked my way through school as a boilermaker. So I worked for a company in both steel fabrication and then in the field as a boilermaker while I was attending Purdue University, which is the Boilermakers, kind of their mascot.
Cool. And then, so you finished your first degree, and what choices of job did you have at that point, and what made you make the decision you did?
Well, I had an opportunity. I wanted to work internationally, and I had worked in the United States in the field in various things, including back at that day, some of the nuclear projects that were going on in the U.S., but I wanted to work internationally, and I had an opportunity to go overseas with the company that I had worked with through school. But I also had an opportunity to go to work for a major oil company, the Arabian American Oil Company in Saudi Arabia. And that probably was a game changer for me, because it took me to an opportunity to learn a lot of things, get a lot of responsibility very early in my career, and also grow as an individual and working in a developing country and seeing a lot more than just the construction side of things, but also the different cultures.
And how long did you spend out there then with Aramco?
I was actually out there for a little over 3 years, working on various projects, and I continued some work after I came back to graduate school as a consultant to them.
And you mentioned coming back to graduate school. So you came back to undertake an MSc, I think. Is that right? And
that's right. And my intent.
Why did you do that after 3 years of working in
my intent in coming back at that point was to kind of reset and focus a little more deliberately on some advanced learning in the construction and business area. And Purdue offered an opportunity to kind of get a combination of some MBA coursework as well as some advanced technical coursework in the construction field, and to do a little research. And so the intent was just to get a master's, but I kind of got a flavor of doing a little research and doing a little teaching, and I enjoyed that. So I actually stayed on and pursued a PhD after the master's.
And what was the topic or the subject of your PhD?
Well, interestingly enough, it was in energy use in construction. So I was modeling the energy use, the complete embedded energy that goes in to a constructed project. Uh-huh. At the time, it was because there was an oil crisis in the U.S. and they were concerned about how much energy was used in the construction process. And so that's where the funding came from. But as it went on and that work completed, my PhD completed in modeling this process, it also became a bit of a basis for, if you will, the embedded carbon that we have in our construction projects, which is more of a modern day topic. But back in the day, it wasn't that wasn't the concern. It was just the amount of oil that we were consuming, consumable, non-renewable resources. And today we look at it for a different reason.
Yes, we do, don't we? And so were you looking at the embodied energy in materials as well as in the process on site?
Yeah, I actually took it from modeling the amount of energy that went into the forging operations of large, heavy construction equipment. There were foundries in Peoria, Illinois, or wherever the large equipment was made, and kind of came up with a way to take that and model what we knew their energy use was in those, and then portion that, just like you would depreciate a cost of an item over a useful life of hours, to get that embedded part right down to what went into a cubic yard of embedded fill that came from the equipment contribution.
I mean, and I guess your background in the industry, your 3-4 years in the industry, helped you understand that process, did it? And allowed it to be a more successful PhD study as a result.
Yeah, I think that, and I think the ability to communicate and understand with equipment manufacturers and others throughout the process, you gain a lot of insight being close to working in the industry that helps you ask some of the right questions and the follow-up questions as well.
So you finished the PhD presumably after 4 years of study and hard work, no doubt. Did you decide to go back to the industry at that point?
I contemplated that, but I actually felt like I enjoyed doing the research enough that I wanted to continue in an academic career. And so that's what I did. I committed to go into a university where I could continue some of that work. I had a real interest in the scheduling area, actually, which I did in my master's degree. And so I continued and pursued that academic career, initially at the University of Kansas, which is a great institution for supporting young faculty in that. And then I got a great opportunity to move up to Iowa State University, which was recognized as one of the top construction engineering programs in the country, and to help them build their graduate program on top of a very successful undergraduate program that they had there.
And so, which presumably you were successful with. How big was the graduate program by the time you finished?
Yeah, we had about 30 graduate students. We were graduating about 2 PhDs per year, I would say, out of that, and probably 15 to 20 master's students per year doing the thesis work. And so yeah, I felt like part of that is not just what you do, but bringing in some great talent, young in their careers, and we kind of work collectively to forge ahead. So some of these people are leaders, and I know in CIB today, we had Mark Federley, Chuck Jaron, who's run the program until just recently. Ed Yaselskis was there. Gary Smith was there. I mean, right. A big part of these programs is getting that good talent in and then collaborating and finding ways to help support each other.
And because of your industry background, was that where you sort of instilled this culture of collaboration and partnership with the industry to the extent that you talked about it in the keynote presentation that you gave in June 2021?
Yeah, I think this program in particular had a culture built around that. The industry had started the program, so they were very in tune. When I interviewed there, the key people were three individuals from the industry that helped not only identify me as the right person, but really helped support me and provide a lot of guidance and support and willingness to collaborate on research, as well as helping support the program and the students in the program in a large extent. So that was one thing about Iowa State, that we were able to build at least an applied research program very quickly there. The more basic research types of things, because we had the collaborations with industry, we could look for opportunities where we could bring that to the table with sponsors at NSF or the Department of Energy or the Corps of Engineers. So they knew that our solutions we were working toward ultimately would have a practical application.
And a lot of people who watch this conversation will be in their early career, Jim. A lot of PhD students and early career researchers involved with CIB, as you know. So do you have any sort of tips or advice that you'd pass on to them based on that sort of background that you experienced?
Well, I think being able to successfully build relationships with your sponsors for your research, and if those are industry people, to have enough industry background. You don't have to have 20 years experience, but have a few years of interactions and make the most of those and build good relationships, because that will help you understand the problems that need to be solved and some of the constraints to the solutions you might suggest or set as your hypotheses. So I think all of those are important. And I would say the same goes if you're going to start a career in industry. Getting to understand the craftsman is it the same thing. You've got to get close to the work face to understand it, to, I think, really bring solutions that are going to ultimately have impact.
And clearly, and I know, and as I said earlier, you talked quite a lot about that in your keynote presentation recently. So I hope people will go and have a good look at that. What did you find were the biggest differences between the culture in industry and in academia, and what did you have to do really to address any challenges in that respect?
Well, fundamentally, I think we want to think about bigger problems in academia, and we want to maybe come at them from a much higher level, a 30,000-foot view, if you will, to gain broad perspective and things. Where industry is trying to solve real short-term kinds of tactical problems, that's what drives them. And so there is a merging that has to go on of these two perspectives if we're going to be successful. So we have to activate industry to think a little longer term, think broader. And in academia, we have to force ourselves to understand the pathway through to the more tactical, or where this is ultimately going to lead from a practical standpoint.
Well, and that possibly brings us on to the next stage in your career, because there you were, well established, very successful mid-career, running this super successful graduate program, and then you got an approach from Kiewit Corporation. Is that as I understand it? So what was that all about?
Well, I got this call, and it was it was about that time in the spring when the semester's wrapping up, and I had reached a point in my career where I'd basically finished grading, and I'd throw all my notes and all that stuff away because I knew I had to refresh each fall. And it was a point in time when I kind of thought I could keep doing this, and you're going to continue to. The next step is more administrative type roles, department heads, those kinds of things. And I just didn't know if that's what I wanted to do. And I'd always had the back of my mind of thinking about something different. And I particularly liked having an impact closer to where the contractors are and influencing them. And then out of the blue, I get this call about, do you know anybody? And would you be interested? And the family situation wasn't at the right time, but the opportunity was there. And I went and I listened, and it's a phenomenal company I work for. I mean, a one of a kind, in part because all 5 of their leaders they've ever had, they've only had 5 CEOs. So they are very long-term thinking. But the original Peter Kiewit set the tone for this. He was very much a learner. He was into developing his folks and making sure they grew and had the best tools and the best systems and processes and everything. It was just a natural fit to go, this is a real challenge to take this on. And they were going to be growing by leaps and bounds. It was a good time to go in and see if I could do what I had some success in academia doing with the company there. And you can't do that by yourself. I mean, the whole systems were supportive. Their culture was in the right place. And it was the right time to go try something new. And it's worked out well.
So they'd had the idea to set up a formal Kiewit University. Is that right? Or was that what you brought to the party for them?
Well, they wanted to set up a broader training program. At the time, they had 4 technical courses like surveying and scheduling and temporary structures. And then they had some schools that they used as people progressed in their career, 3 schools along there. And when I went in and looked at it, realized there was a lot of opportunity to kind of reform that, reinvent it a little bit, and expand it. Today we have, I think, 27 technical courses. We do things in our technical courses that don't happen in graduate schools because we've got the expertise to do it, and we are at a scale that we can do it over and over every year. So that helps us. So that was a real opportunity to shape that. And I did it with basically internal managers. Our managers are our trainers, which is a very unique situation. People are committed, just like Peter Kiewit was. He taught the original course in supervision, and that culture has continued on.
So they're out on site one day, or they're leading a project one day, and the next they're coming in with you to engage with your cohort. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And what we provide is some guidance on how to facilitate those classes. But as you get to more advanced classes, it's really facilitating discussion. It's not just lecturing. Although lessons learned and stories and things that we've learned from our project experiences are great to share, because people will remember those, and hopefully they won't repeat the things that have been done that weren't done exactly right, and they will replicate those best practices that they've learned too.
So you see it as a great vehicle for internal knowledge management within the company, how to share lessons learned and how to avoid mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a critical part of our success as an entity, is to be able to bring that sharing, and also to build a broad base of common work and knowledge, so that when we take on these mega jobs, we can bring people from very different project experiences together, and they all kind of have the same systems and processes, and they know what to expect from each other.
So there's a Kiewit way, as it were. Is that the sort of idea that you're part of the way in which the way of doing business in the company?
Yeah, I think I would say that's the Kiewit way that we approach things, and we are a pretty intense organization around that. And but we found that if we do things that Kiewit way, we'll accept the mistakes that are still made that way, but we can avoid a lot of risk because we know a lot of these systems and approaches are proven to have been successful in the past.
And do you award qualifications to those coming through the courses? Are you an awarding body, or do you partner with a college or a university to award formal qualifications?
I wouldn't say that we have fully embraced that kind of a thing. We're now working with kind of some badging things around that, but for the most part, there's a certain amount of peer pressure to complete. Obviously, you start a class, you want to complete it. It's tracked in your electronic transcript in your human resource file. Yep. In that way, so we know what people have been through and been exposed to, and in cases where they've participated, their work projects or those kind of things are shared, and people can see the quality of the work that they've done in that way. But I wouldn't say that we're not too hung up on the credentials that go with that. Now, we do offer the CEU credits for more of licensure and things like that for our professional design engineers.
And so do you find that they do go off maybe in parallel and seek formal qualifications during their career? And is it a help in that direction for them?
Many people do. Many people are getting either a master's in business administration or a certificate of some type, maybe in an area of data analytics or something like that, or they might, in some cases, be taking actual 4-credit courses at colleges and universities to build their own expertise and depth in geotech or structures or something like that.
And there's a link, and you encourage, presumably it helps them also with professional recognition in professional bodies.
Absolutely. Yeah. We want that. The first thing we want is we want a high degree of technical competence, but then we want that to be recognized in some way so that for when we do have to have a showing of a credential or qualifications, we've got folks that have met those requirements and maintain those requirements for licensure.
So overall, Jim, how would you sum up the benefit or the impact of the university for Kiewit? I mean, has it worked well to attract better new talent or to retain the top talent? Has it made a contribution to the bottom line of the business?
Well, yeah, I'll speak to all of those. First of all, I think it's a differentiator in our value proposition that we offer to young people coming to work for us, is that they know we make a huge investment of time and money in their development, and that the university provides a formal structure to make sure that happens. So that helps you get people in the door. It helps us attract experienced talent from other companies who know that they will get that here as they advance up through even the executive level. They'll continue to have opportunities for learning to support their career development and advancement. So that differentiates us from some of our competition in being able to do that. After that, then we look to, okay, well, how does this help us in managing risk on jobs? Because that's what contractors do. They get paid to assume risk, and so we want to be successful at that. So all of these lessons learned and these trainings and things bring people together from across the company so that we learn from each other, and that helps us better able to manage those risks on projects, to identify and mitigate areas of need, and to know where to go to get talent when we have a specific need. So let's say we have a pile driving problem. We know who the experts are in the company, and we can pick up the phone and get them on our project to help address maybe a new problem or a new issue in that. And so I think all of that helps us manage risk and be a better contractor that way. We have never set out to try to calculate an ROI. It's kind of embedded in our culture that the return on training is there and we get it. And in fact, when other people from other companies say, how can you afford to do it? You know, what we're thinking internally is these other folks don't get it. But in essence, it says, well, you won't make the commitment if you don't have faith that when you put that effort in, that it will pay some benefit. And so we're constantly looking to make sure our programs are meeting our needs, and we change them. And we do more curriculum adjustments than universities do. We have feedback on our classes, and we're constantly having experts internally look at things and see if are we at the cutting edge? Do we have the right content in there? So we're constantly improving. Well, that also helps us establish what some of our ways, our Kiewit ways are, and our standards are, because if you're going to train on it, you got to agree upon one way is the best way to do it. And so that also helps us in our continuous improvement process and our innovation processes to make that all integrated into what we're doing and learning. So we say that is unequivocally, I would say that helps us be a very successful contractor. Our results speak to that. And so we know that we learned early on that, you know, the planning, spending money on planning pays back 20-fold. And the same thing goes on training. We just haven't calculated what that multiplier effect is, but it's clearly a big part of that. Then to retain employees, I think it's important. It goes two ways. Early careers, we see people that will out advertise they'll ask for Kiewit experience when they're trying to hire our folks away or hire people.
Yeah.
Well, part of that is they haven't invested anything in training. They just want to ride on our back of what we've invested in our training. And you can't get upset about it. You got to just kind of take that as a nice compliment. And hopefully we're doing other things to retain our employees with the way that we interact, the family nature that we have, the benefits that we offer, all those other retention kinds of things. And the ultimate rewards are, you know, we have a very strong culture of employee ownership and becoming shareholders in the company, and ultimately that wealth generation that comes through our continued hard work and success collectively retains people. So, you know, it all works together. I like to have all of the people doing our training be shareholders in the company, because they see the benefit of training someone that isn't necessarily their employee, but it's they're one of the owners of the company, so they see it a benefit to the overall enterprise.
Your comment about other firms not making the same investment, Jim, reminds me of a comment that was once made to me when I said, you know, don't you worry about spending money on people, and then they leave. And he said, you know, what I worry about is not spending money and them not leaving.
We feel pretty confident. You know, we have a pretty high expectation that, you know, if we train someone, you know, they're going to apply it, and we're going to see the benefit of it. And, you know, I think that's, you hit it on the head, is if you don't train them, then you can't be upset with anyone but yourself if they don't do it right, because you haven't set the expectation, provided the means and the ways for them to practice and learn. And, you know, people are going to make some mistakes too. We have to accept some of those, but make sure we maximize the learning that goes on through a mistake so that we don't make it the second time.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Two quick questions before we leave the topic of Kiewit University. The first is, you mentioned that you constantly evolve the curriculum to the needs of the business. What have you got an example of one of the latest areas of work that you're looking at the moment for improving the business?
Well, we have set out to be a data-driven company, and that's easy to say, but it goes beyond what a young engineer might have had back 7 or 8 years ago in a basic stat class in their engineering curriculum.
Yeah.
Today, data analytics means a lot more. There's some modern tools, and so we've evolved, and we've got our own internal course that we offer. It's actually taught by the University of Nebraska for us and we've worked to run that curriculum out, and now we're refining it the second time through to provide that foundational material and data analytics that people need. And we hope more universities are going to go to taking a look at their curriculum, so they're going to bring people to us better prepared in that regard. But until then, we want to be that corporation that runs on good data analytics, and that doesn't matter whether it's human resource data, it's cost data, it's things related to schedule risk, it's quality areas. I mean, we have mounds of data in any construction company, and we've got to start learning and getting to the point where we can use it for predictive analytics.
And my other question is, at the time of us chatting here, Jim, it's August 2021. It's, we've been in the grips of a global pandemic for best part of a year and a half now. How have you seen the impact of that pandemic on your work, on the work of the university and the impact on the business?
Well, I can remember in March 17th, I was on a beach in Hawaii, and I was taking a call and realizing, I said to my wife, we're going to head back. This pandemic is coming. This is in 2020. And came back, and the next week we had a call, and we started thinking about how we're going to shut down all of our in-person classes here in this beautiful facility in Omaha, and how we were going to pivot. My view on this, and I was influenced by someone I met along the way from another company who chose not to participate in a recession in the construction industry. So I have that same attitude. We're just not going to participate in this pandemic of it shutting us down from training. So we converted our field supervisor class and our beginning operations class to virtual.
Right.
We just, and that doesn't mean you take the class and you just videotape it. I mean, we changed the class in a matter of about 6 weeks. We offered the first virtual field supervisor class week long. And 2 weeks later, I think it was, we offered the first Ops 1 class a week long. And we've been doing those over and over again ever since. And now we're going back to in-person training. We just started August 1st, but we're kind of transitioning our courses. And as we come back, we're going to take advantage of what we learned that worked real well virtually to do some of the setup. So when people arrive in Omaha, they already know each other. They've been working on a case virtually together. And now when they come in, we can make maximum use of that relationships that have been built to really take that learning to a higher level.
So you're moving to a hybrid model, which overall you think will be even better, do you?
Yeah, I do. I think it will, because we're also, rather than putting all of the learning into a week, we're actually stretching it out over about 15 weeks. So people are putting in an hour a week, a little bit of time. They're doing some pairwise learning, and then they're doing some what we call learning crews, small work groups on tasks together on small cases. And then when they come together, we'll mix them differently, and we'll take on some bigger cases and almost what I would call problem-solving charrettes. I mean, these are really big cases that involve relationships and technical material and kind of the things that you do, if you will, a job simulation problem solving. And they're actually our own problems we're using. Yeah. We've experienced a lot of this, so it's pretty easy to get material for our cases.
Jim, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you very much indeed. Before we finish, I'd like to end all our chats by asking our guests for what we call the top opportunity. And so in your field of expertise, what would you say is the top opportunity or challenge that politicians and policymakers around the world ought to focus on?
Well, I think politicians and policymakers need to continue to recognize that driving progress forward requires education, and it requires better understanding of where problems are and how we can collectively take away the barriers to success for industry, for academia, and encourage strong, as I mentioned in that talk, stronger collaboration between all. I think there's great models out there, whether it's a government that helps to support academia in the building sciences, or it's university structures, or it's industry people collectively knowing we all have to pull together and getting involved collectively together to define the process whereby we can share information and share knowledge and further advance young people going into it, researchers, help them to get their starts, and then to provide good input and problems and data for the researchers to work with to create better understanding. So that's kind of a global thing, I know, but
yeah.
Politicians have to see that there's value in this. It's not just the local soccer team or football team or basketball team that you have related to a university, but these academic units can be a real economic driver too for our society.
And how would you sell the benefit, particularly then of built environment, to politicians?
Well, it is, a coin term, but it is what we use really as a society to define advancement, whether it's it's the bricks and mortar of the university institutions and the labs that are there, or it's the things that come after that, the roads and the bridges, as well as the public buildings and public spaces, and include in that everything else that goes with it. Are there technologies and all of those? So yeah, you've got to make it all go together to further society along, and so spending the right amount of money in those areas will generate quite a multiplier long term. It's not just the 4 to 5 multiplier on the actual expenditure for a capital facility, but it's what is done with that facility beyond that's the real multiplier that pays off 20 or 40 times a year for many, many years into the future, and builds a foundation for the next set of innovations.
Well, Jim, it seems to me you've walked the talk in that respect. I'm looking at a fabulous facility in your background right behind you there. So, that investment you clearly feel is paying off in the development of the talent for Kiewit Corporation. Jim, all I can say is thank you very much indeed for joining us today. CIB is a big champion, as you know, of improved collaboration between academia and industry. So your final message there for policymakers, for us, absolutely strikes at the heart of what is important. You've trailblazed personally and corporately as Kiewit in this respect. So a very big thank you indeed.
Good. Very good to your organization too. And Godspeed with everything ahead.
Well, thank you. So to our audience, for more information on this event, on Jim's work, or for his previous keynote presentation, or for details of all our other work, please see the website, cibworld.org. That's it for now for this edition of CIB in Conversation. I'm Don Ward, and it's goodbye from CIB.